Hello, hello, and welcome. I'm Zilla. This is my Athenaeum, and welcome to my Ancient Gaming live stream, the stream where I play games with Ancient Studies content and talk about it. Today is our stream 4 of the game The Cave, and we are hopefully going to finish this today because next weekend and the rest of June and most of July I will be streaming over on the Save Ancient Studies Alliance's channel instead of this one with the game The Forever Labyrinth. So please do check out. If you haven't been following along and you'd like to see the cave from the start, you can find all of my Ancient Gaming recordings on my YouTube channel down below. That's Zilla's Athenaeum on YouTube. And you can follow me on social media if you would like to stay in touch. I also do have a Patreon where all of this stuff gets posted, including schedule updates and some perks. If you are here, feel free to say hi in chat. I'd love to have you. And otherwise, let's get on with the show. So, for anyone joining us, or a quick refresher for those who may have forgotten, this is the game The Cave, which, yes, is almost certainly a reference to Plato's Cave. A game from Double Fine Entertainments, what was sort of remade out of the scraps of LucasArts back in the day. They do a lot of point-and-click adventure-style games and a lot of very creative storytelling. This game is no exception. Here we play as 3 different explorers, what was pointed out in a mechanic somewhat similar to the Lost Vikings. Hi, DJ Trundlebot, good to have you. Always a pleasure. Do let me know if there is any issue with the sound. I am trying to keep the game volume relatively low since it seems to be louder in the recordings than it is when I am hearing it. So if it's too quiet, also let me know. So we have the adventurer whose story we played out last week. We have our little medieval knight, so to speak, has as much legitimacy as any of them, in my opinion, whose adventure we played out a few weeks ago. And now we are going to be playing the story of the time traveler.
No doubt you have realized by now that here in the cave, the rules of time and space are not exactly, well, set in stone, so to speak. But for the time traveler, time and space are mere playthings, tools manipulated to pay back petty slights. So, prepare yourselves for a tale of revenge that spans 1,000,000 years. And remember, even with the best of intentions, time travel can be unpredictable. And with the worst of intentions, well, I guess we're about to see. Oh, I'm sorry, I was just trying to scare you.
So that was our narrator, the embodiment of the cave itself. So in here, all of our folks have less than savory motivations for their stories. And here they get their heart's most petty and dangerous desire, generally speaking. So we have a time machine for a time traveler. We know a little bit about the time traveler's story. We've gotten some memories. She is a museum worker in 2703, I think was the date. 2701, maybe. She works in an ancient history museum, which specializes in somewhere around our time. And she is just, your average corporate museum worker, honestly. She has a terrible commute to work, she's having a bad day, and her absolute worst colleague just got named Employee of Eternity or something like that. And she thinks it should have been her. So now that we're in here, let's look around. What do we got? Well, some kind of a log. Got a ladder going down. What's down here? An empty fuse box. We've seen that mechanic before. Back in the tutorial area. Sorry, the entrance to the cave. We were helping out the gift shop clerk for the cave. So what's up then? Well, we've got a memory marker for the night story. So previously we have had our little knight who was just some peasant farmer picking turnips when a knight passing by on the road had a heart attack and died. And the boy stole his armor, went off to pretend to be a knight, but had no intention of being chivalrous, which, to be honest, we have this fantasy about how knights worked and what chivalry is for. Really, chivalry is just a set of rules trying to make sure that the people with the power weren't complete dicks. They were still dicks. They were still wealthy elite ruling over, the peasant classes, and didn't really go out of their way to be, more protective of people than anybody else. You have your altruists who want to do something, and you have plenty of people who aren't. So here we have the more sort of narrative depiction, the hero in shining armor. And that was this memory. Okay. So, alright, we have a little block with some fossils in it showing a prehistoric record in the vicinity. Looks like a big fish chasing a littler fish. Nice and cute. So let's drag this rock over. I bet we can get up to that convenient fuse box. I'll take that. Where was that empty fuse box? I think it was down. So I think we have here those brick walls and stuff to indicate sort of a contemporary time for us, but the cave is full of shadows of reality. As the narrator, the cave itself, said, things are a little bit fluid in here. But I really like this conceit of the future museum worker. I think a lot about what people will see of our civilization in the future, right? What we know about our future, about our past, how we view the past, how we learn about the past, and how we curate the past to our modern audience. It really is a very a fraught sort of thing. They say that history is written by the victors, but then it is rewritten and rewritten and rewritten by whatever society There is, and that's to some degree inevitable. You can have people who are more biased and people who are less biased, and the people who are going to be the least biased in their presentations are going to be the ones who take into account that they know that they have a point of view. This is counterintuitive when you first start to think about it. It's like, well, wouldn't you try to be objective? The truth is that nobody can be objective. Everyone lives in their point of view, in their culture, in their head, with all of the biases that that entails. And therefore, history can never be written objectively. Nothing can really be written objectively. If you are viewing something from outside, you are still coming to it with your own biases. You know, you can't just go somewhere and write purely what is happening, because you still have to pick which things to talk about, which details to present, and how you frame them. There is no objectivity in terms of any communication. So the way that you have to go about trying to give as clear a picture as possible is to say, okay, what are my biases? And try and recognize that, and recognize it in the process of it. So we can recognize that we have been steeped in a culture of white supremacy for hundreds of years, that we have been steeped in colonialism for thousands of years, that our conceptions of relationship values, of morality, of all these things have been shaped, and when we look at another culture, we can say, okay, this feels this way to me. Is that, you know, what are my biases about that thing, and actually take that into account. That's the best way to get a true picture of what you're talking about, what you're looking at. The deceptive way to do that would be to present your viewpoint as simply correct and not talk about your biases at all. So this is counterintuitive for a lot of readers, because we like to think of scholars and historians as being objective viewers. We like to think that the external truth, as unfiltered by a person, can in some way be conveyed from person to person. That's simply not true. It's never going to be possible. And don't tell me that AI could do it either, because AI are created and learn based on what humans give them, which is inevitably biased. So, a future museum
Behold, science!
is inevitably going to be curated by people with a viewpoint of their own. We can see the future tech here. We've got a closed door that is some kind of energy barrier. We can in fact cross it. That's fine. Instead of the sort of prehistoric looking flora and fossils, we have these purple crystals. They look like amethyst, but they look very sci-fi, don't they? So,
Oh, it's you. I thought we fired you. Still sore about getting passed over for greatest employee of all time? I'm sure you saw my commemorative photo on the way in. Don't feel bad. My family has been working here for generations. I take that back. Do feel bad.
yes.
Well, personality must not be a big hiring point here.
They really do go out of their way to portray this guy as unpleasant, don't they? So it's interesting to me, this choice of presentation, right? The main character set are really pretty diverse. We have, you know, we have here a woman of color being passed over for ostensibly a white man, even several hundred years in the future, which, you know, honestly, hashtag relatable, right? And they go out of their way to sort of portray him like, she looks awesome, right? She looks like a main character. She's got these cool hover boots. She is, stylish. She's kind of got
The
the
greatest employee of all time award comes with a pretty big raise. Have I rubbed that in yet?
um, whereas he is portrayed in ways that we consider not only extremely white, but with sort of outsized, almost Neanderthal looking traits that will become obvious soon. But like big, prominent brow, big, bulbous nose, you know, bushy, unkempt eyebrows and hair. He's picking his nose in public. He is garish in how he talks. He's an asshole. He's an asshole. And his family has been working here for generations. He means that more literally than probably even he knows. So, here's his commemorative picture. We've got the museum door button, which we could open to presumably let our friends in. What else have we got? We've got a display here with a crumpled can of cola. It looks like it's a Coke can, but they have their own branding. I can't quite remember what it is. It's gluey, maybe. I can't quite see it. Or glug. Glug, that's what it is. It's glug. Might be with an umlaut. I can't quite read it. DJ Trundlebutt, is the narrator reliable, or is this how the time traveler wants it to be seen? You know, how would we tell? So, is...
Me and the other greatest employees of all time are all grabbing drinks at the wizard's lair later. Wait, there are no other greatest employees of all time. More for me.
So really, like we're seeing this person being presented this way. Do we know if this is objective reality? No, we can't know that. The cave has not, told us, and even if it had, how would we be sure? The cave is the narrator in charge, and we get the impression that these folks who are coming into the cave for their heart's desires believe it, if nothing
That my
else.
own hover parking spot came with getting greatest employee of all time.
They came here wanting this to some degree. They believe it, or they wouldn't go through all this nonsense. Climbing around, solving puzzles, helping other people get their wicked heart's desires. But we can't know if this is a recreation of what the time traveler experienced or what she sees it as through her biases. Maybe this guy isn't a jerk in real life. Maybe real life doesn't exist. In fact, we know real life doesn't exist because this is a video game. And... or do we? Dun dun dun! There's so many layers of history and reality at play that it's really hard to say. So this initial display being just a crumpled can of Glug Cola, I think is really funny. It's like, this is an artifact from a previous era. This is the same way that we might have a clay jar on display from 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. It's a cup. It's a drinking vessel. It's decorated in some way that happens to be really common. Some of them are. We've got behind it on the screen, we've got these, can you see my cursor? I don't know if you can see my cursor. Yeah, you can. We've got these text plaques, so we can write a lot about that. It's like, do they know where it was found? Do they know what Glug Cola was, how common it was? Do they understand the ingredient list, or has linguistic drift changed it so much that we no longer know what the words that they were using mean? There are a lot of very esoteric words that go into something like, soda ingredients. We've got, does sodium benzoate preservative mean the same thing in 600 years that it does now, or is that just some archaic term that means a chemical, but we don't know which one? That is a thing that changes, especially if there's a lot of lost knowledge between then and now. So just to give you an example of what I'm talking about, like if you read or watch, preferably watch, something like Aristophanes' The Birds. It's a Greek comedy from roughly 2,000 years ago, getting on 2,500. And in that play, it lists a whole bunch of names of birds. Birds that live around the Mediterranean, perhaps. Birds that they knew of from further flung places. And some of them, we have enough context to be like, okay, this is their word for hoopoe. This is their word for sparrow. We know those. But sometimes there are birds listed where we're like, well, we know it's a bird because of context. We don't know which one it is. There's just not enough context to figure it out. We can guess that it was something that was native to the Mediterranean, but maybe it was an exotic bird to them. They certainly traveled further afield. So, how do we have this much text about a crumpled can of cola, presumably empty, probably found in a garbage pit? There's even shadows of other pieces of garbage in there, might be more of them. Well, there's a lot to learn even from our trash. Because if you're looking back on a society that you have very little context for, you can tell a lot based on the way they design things. A can of cola is a very particular shape, it's a very particular use, and it is designed more or less to last. The writing on it, there is a lot of writing on it. There's also a lot of advertising design, so visual design, things that we know about the technology they use to create aluminum cans, the dyes that they use to make discoloration of the metal or to paint over it, the ingredients that they use and the words that they use to talk about different chemicals versus what's on the advertising that appeals to people, if we can even figure out that that's advertising. If we don't have enough context, maybe a cola can is a relatively rare item and we think it's something that maybe the elites used, or maybe it's something that was common but often decayed or was recycled into something else unrecognizable. If we don't have that context, we can tell it was a drinking vessel probably by the way that the top is shaped, but was it a common use item? Or was it something fancy? Was it hard to produce? The way the top is shaped tells us a lot about technology, about the way that we consider single-use items. You can't put the top back together after you pop it. You can figure out from the way that this moves, if it's still attached, or even if it's just a nub, you can probably extrapolate the shape that was on there, at least to some degree, but this was intended to be used one time, not refilled and used over and over again. So there's a lot that we can learn just from a piece of trash. And that's pretty cool. So the next thing we have...
I heard voting on the GEOAT committee was unanimous. FYI, that stands for greatest employee of all time. I won, by the way.
Yes. Yes, we know. I love that we don't ever get names in here. It's kind of awesome. So the next thing we have is this wheel. And the spoke design is very unfamiliar to me. Oh, yes. Or a religious object of worship. Yes. The sort of joke in archaeology, I'm sure you will all have heard it at some point, is if you don't know what it is, it was a ritual object. Sometimes we find things that are classified as ritual objects that are like dildos. I'm not joking. So this wheel with an unfamiliar spoke design, it's big enough that it's probably these spokes on either like a monster truck wheel or a wagon wheel. I can't tell from this distance and how it's portrayed whether it's meant to be metal or wood. Probably metal, so probably more like a monster truck, but it's unusual to get this sort of spoke design where it's alternating 1 and 2. That could be from, sometime in our future. So it doesn't have to be realistic. And it's sitting on top of this display stand that looks almost like a dinosaur tooth. I think it's meant to convey this sense of antiquity, of, oh my gosh, look at this thing, it's so old. As opposed to the trash floating display, which is much more sort of like this is a hyper modern display case, right? Like that's very futuristic. This looks more like they took a dinosaur tooth as inspiration for a stand for this wheel. But then they have, another plaque for it, and they're talking about, you can see actually there's a design back here of how the wheel would fit onto an axle. So, DJ Trundlebot, maybe it's the origin of the common phrase, Jesus, take the wheel. You take it where? It belongs in a museum, obviously. Watch my previous stream for some more Indiana Jones jokes. Woohoo! So up here, we can't. So this is the Museum of Natural History. That's a little bit of an odd classification because these days we don't think of natural history as including human artifacts. We tend to separate that out into, human eras. Natural history is typically talking about something more like this skeleton up here, which it looks like it might be a cow. I can't see the top of it. It looks like it might be a cow. It's not fully articulated in the limbs, so possibly not. Could be some sort of future animal. The skull shape looks a little bit more like a horse than a cow, to be honest. But it has those sideways horns coming out. You can't see any articulation at the end of the limbs, and the limbs look sort of oddly distorted to me. But it's you can tell it's an herbivore by the teeth. It has a big gap here, like you would see on a horse jaw. That's where the bit of a bridle goes, is between the front teeth, which are for chomping, and the back teeth, which are for grinding. But it doesn't have any fangs. It doesn't have, and it does have those big flat teeth. So some kind of herbivore, probably a bovine. We've got another trash display back here. In addition to the cola can, we can very distinctly see some kind of wheel, a gear wheel, like something you would turn on a well, perhaps, which is a mechanic we saw elsewhere. So, potentially part of whatever that other wheel was on. We've got a futuristic little camera. There's an exhibit of what's-his-face speaking. This
exhibit features the ancient combustion engine, or as it was commonly known at the time, the Dino Hypernator. In the early 21st century, humans used these primitive engines to power everything from toothbrushes to toasters, even elevators. Ancient man's addictions to toast and teeth brushing quickly exhausted the world's oil supply. Once the precious substance was finally depleted, ancient man was forced to find more advanced sources of power. Research that led directly to the modern hover boot design. It also set the stage for the bad oral hygiene fashion craze we still see to this day.
Fascinating. So I was talking about the distinctions between types of history and like what we distinguish in museums. It's not necessary that the categories will stay the same over time. Things that used to get called history, we now divide into history and mythology and natural history and anthropology and sociology. Like, these categories are not natural, they're all constructed. Where the boundaries lie between all of these concepts is fluid. We have rules right now that we tend to understand and spend a lot of time reifying and defining, but it's not a guarantee that things will stay this way. If what we define as natural history is anything before the advent of hover boots, right, which seems oddly possible in this scenario, um, that's a legitimate way of looking at things, of reclassifying things, of drawing the lines. Just because something is a social construct does not mean that it has no meaning. DJ Trundlebot, the skull was perhaps used in the secret mystery rituals of the Vestal Horse Girls. That... DJ Trundlebot has spent too much time around me absorbing just like bits and pieces of things that almost make sense. Oh boy. So, toast and toothbrushing are apparently the reasons that the world's oil supply went out of fashion. And the Dino Hypernator combustion engine definitely, sure, real thing. It's interesting that they say bad oral hygiene, because we've seen no evidence of that trend. Like, we can't see... We can't see inside our protagonist's mouth, but...
I heard voting on the GEOAT committee was unanimous.
As you can
FYI,
see
that
the
stands
inside
for
of his
greatest
mouth, which is
employee
perfectly
of all
regular
time.
teeth.
I won, by the way.
I am very tempted to make a British joke here. I'm sorry, but oh my goodness, the teeth. So we have the completely erroneous facts about ancient history, whatever they call that, about 600 years ago. Just treat it as fact, treat it as knowledge, and that is a thing that you sometimes run into, is we have socially driven assumptions about the past. I don't know what reason we would have to believe that toothbrushing and toasters made the ancient world go round for these people, but perhaps that, lack of oral hygiene, the trend for bad oral hygiene that the director mentioned, could be like a lens to look back and say, well, why do we have this belief that bad oral hygiene is cool? Well, maybe it's because we associated it with the apocalypse caused by ancient oil engines. That is a way that people often will look back and try to make sense of things. And this is why you get, revisions over time of this same knowledge. People with different biases, different lenses come along and say, that doesn't actually make sense. But they can't separate their own context from themselves, and so it's possible to do this again and again. That doesn't mean that this is a useless process, because they do know this is a combustion engine. They do know that the world ran out of oil to use in the combustion engines, and that led to the development of hover technology. Those are things that are legitimate knowledge that are interesting to know, and when they evaluate this knowledge, you can still learn things. You can learn quite a few things. But you can't ever assume that you know everything. It's always worth interrogating your assumptions, and it's always worth learning what the experts think about a subject. More evidence is better. So, we have here an actual combustion engine. Clearly, you can look at it and say this is too big to power something like a toothbrush. Now, they have their reasons for assuming otherwise, but it's still, it's worth looking at. So let's look at it. So she doesn't want to do anything with the engine. Doesn't want to do anything with the oil intake. But here we have a little diagram. I like the symbolism they use here. So they have this combustion engine of some kind. It's a nicer version of what we have here, stylized a bit. You know, it's got these three sort of spokes and the little like doohickey at the top. Doesn't actually have the oil intake or exhaust, but that's fine. That's fine. But you have little like circuit lines going to a drill, a mixer, a computer, a toothbrush, a toaster. I can't quite see what that last thing on the bottom right is. It almost looks like a coconut with a light on it, but who knows? That could be anything. Maybe it's an Amazon Echo. But note, those hadn't been invented when this game came out. So here we've got the elevator. Don't press the button. We've got it down.
Guess
Got
who
another
the
down.
Greatest Employee of All Time award? Not you.
And we got an up. So let's look around. Ladders, a technology that never changes. Oh. So over here, this is where the fuse box was in the present. We've still got our old prehistoric block just sitting there. And over here, we have an antique arcade machine. She don't want to play. We should probably open this door at some point. What's even out here? Nothing. Not at this time, anyway.
Yep. Greatest employee of all time.
Oh,
They
wait,
don't give that to just anyone.
No, they gave it to you. Let's see. What is down here? Nothing. For now. And what about this elevator? Nothing? Okay, well, what's down here then? More museum. The Smurg. It's a Smurg.
Archaeologists have yet to determine the original use of the Smurg. Thousands of these strange artifacts have been recovered at ancient dig sites around the world. People living in long-gone eras often carried several in their pockets at all times, leading some experts to attribute to the Smurg a religious or mythological significance. Other historians dismiss this reasoning, claiming a more mundane use by teenage boys to twirl and braid their hair. We may never know the true use of the Smurg. What do you think it did?
So here we have the ritual object joke, cultural misunderstanding joke. So we have an image of a teenage boy using a Smurg to comb his hair, an image of people in priest robes bowing to a giant Smurg, and several people using Smurgs as jewelry, nose ring, earring, crown. Obviously, we can see it is a giant key. In fact, it looks very much like the giant key we used to open the cave tour, as it were, back in the gift shop. So, that's the kind of thing, like, once you move away from physical keys, which is a thing that we are currently in the process of doing. There are people who use exclusively card readers, RFID chips. There are even people who install RFID chips in their hands so that they can open their door because their hand has the ID code. if we move away from the use of keys as keys and a bunch of knowledge is lost about how the cultural how physical locks operated, this is extremely unlikely. We have evidence of keys and locks going back to, I mean, there are some pretty common ones in the Roman Empire. There are some that were used in ancient Greece. I'm sure that there's some kind of equivalent used in other parts of the world in ancient times. This is not an uncommon process or object. There's probably not going to be a sufficient loss of data at any time in human history. Well, I guess I can't really say that for sure. Who knows? But let's say that aliens came to Earth and they had never seen a physical key. Well, they might just have to pin a name on it. And maybe it's Smurg. And if all the evidence they have is a couple of pictures of, young teenage boys with keys in their pockets, like pulling them out, well, maybe this is a conclusion they come to. It's not a good conclusion, but you can see how they'd get there. And keys are often pieces of jewelry. I know of several artists who love to center keys in their artwork. Personally, I love key bounded pins and brooches and pendants. I think they're gorgeous. I've seen little wire designs with vines growing out of them and all sorts of beading. And I think that's wonderful. It's not impossible for people to see that as jewelry. So here we have a recreation, a painting of a guy wearing a rangfuss.
Although no actual rangfuss have ever been uncovered, top archaeologists believe they were commonly used as some kind of head accessory from the 1940s to the late 2100s. They came in several styles and colors to project the mood of the wearer. Upon entering a social setting, each person would assess the crowd by the types of rangfuss they were wearing. It is thought that World War I was started when Sir Winston wore a particularly inappropriate rangfuss at a cocktail party with the American President Franklin D. Bon Jovi.
So we have a lot of conflation going on here. Oh, sorry, I missed a couple messages. DJ Trundlebot, I never knew Smurgs were so versatile. Maybe I should get one. I'm sure you have some options. I'm sure you do. And keys are quite phallic. Clearly, they play some role in fertility rites. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, what is that? Oh yes. So let's anticipate a future in which that Madonna song. What's the name of it? Open your heart to me, baby. I am the lock and you have the key. Eh? Right? So why not? Why not? So this museum seems to be particularly in a bad space for conflation of artifacts and texts, having a record of a President of the United States, Franklin D. Bon Jovi. They're conflating, an actual President of the United States with a popular rock star. Not even quite the same era, but from far enough away, it all kind of looks the same. So this might not be a particularly reputable museum in terms of how it curates its exhibits, or it could be that sufficient knowledge or curational practices have been lost that they're sort of rebuilding and they're just trying to make sense of what they have. We do have plenty of records of hats and headgear that get misunderstood in public, or we don't know everything about, or that do in fact cause social upset in history that we know more about. There was even as recent as a few years ago, I remember reading avidly about the particular brooches that Queen Elizabeth, you know, see Respect the Dead episode, whatever that was, uh, Queen Elizabeth II would wear to different social outings. There was a whole like language of subtle insult and approbation and all sorts of things, where she would, wear a pin given to her by the enemy of the person she was meeting with to show her, like, amazing, top-notch nonsense. I love it. But like when you're in high society, you can have things like that mean a lot. It's to take a less sort of high end example, you have this stereotypical image, right, of a catty fight between two women in a social group who wore the same dress to a party, right? Like that's a thing that I'm told actually happens. I is beyond me, but like I'm told that this is an actual thing that people do. This is not quite as ridiculous as it sounds at first. Of course it is ridiculous, because this is Double Fine making a bunch of jokes about how we view the past, how we know things, and how we present things. There's also a huge difference between how popular media understands something from the past and how a museum should. How scholars understand something. Like, a lot of my videos are about taking apart the sort of pop culture understandings of things and sort of getting at why they may not be all that great for certain reasons, because all of them have a cultural purpose. There's some reason why we think of them that way. Like, one of the things that this reminds me of is actually the discussion about Spartan helmets. Or maybe for something more familiar, Viking helmets. Viking helmets did not have horns. Not a thing. But when we picture a Viking, we always picture them with these great big horns on their helmet. Why? Because it needed to look dramatic for an opera. And so that became visual code in our time for Vikings. So the Spartan helmet with the big crest here is actually a Corinthian helmet. The Spartans wore whatever helmets they had. A lot of Greek helmets didn't have crests. A lot of Greek helmets had different styles of front piece and chin strap and all this sort of stuff. There are a bunch of them. Hi, how do I say? How do Sakiemon? I can pronounce this. I just mix it up in my head. Hi. Yes. Vikings did not have horned helmets because that would be terrible in battle. Like, the first thing that would happen is your enemy would go smack across your head and you would be yanked to the side, and then you'd be down in armor, which is hard to get up. Once you're off your feet in battle, you're kind of screwed. So yes, that was an invention literally by an opera director. Or was it the actor? I can't remember now. Look it up. Look it up. It'll be fun. You could also headbutt people with your horns, and samurai helmets actually, they have a much smaller headpiece that's way up here. And the way that that samurai fight, very different. Like, the whole armor setup for samurai is very, very different from the Viking setup. There are scholars who know a lot more about this than I do, but one of the things that you need to know when you're talking about how ancient samurai fought is that Japan is very, very metal poor, especially iron. The reason that samurai swords, that katanas and things are folded so many times is because the metal is so bad. The metal they were working with is just so bad. So the armor is generally not made of metal, so it's much lighter, it's much easier to work with, and it's much more flexible. So Viking helmets are generally pictured as a big metal bowl with big ass horns out this way. A samurai helmet is actually like this. It's sort of a deflective shape, makes them a little bit more like robots if they like scrunch their neck down. So it's very protective. It deflects right off, and it's also made of light, loose pieces. I think they're often bamboo. I know that some of them are ceramic. But the point being that even if you knock it around, you are not in the same danger as if you fall wearing metal armor. And it's also much harder to actually hit in the same way. So assume your sword gets stuck here, it's just as likely that the samurai can yank it out of your hand by going like that as it is that he can pull your helmet down. Again, I am disillusioned. Well, armor is really cool. Armor is really, really cool. And I love katanas. Katanas are so much fun. I love them to bits. A little bit of a weeb. I am not apologetic about that, but I do feel a little bit guilty saying it. I spent some time in Japan. I studied abroad there in college. So yes, I do speak some Japanese. Yes, I am planning to do some Japanese Archeo gaming at some point. Haven't quite figured that out yet. But like one of my favorite things that I did while I was there is we went to the Kyoto Cultural Museum. Speaking of museums. I'm not playing. I need to get back to playing, but I have so much to say. So we went to the Japanese Cultural Museum in Kyoto, and they had like 500-600-year-old swords made by masters, and they let me hold one. Oh, oh, I love it. Okay, back to Rangfusts with their gizmos and fuzzy stuff. So they're talking about buckets here. Buckets, again, a little bit too basic for us to realistically think we're going to lose this information. But what if they were baseball caps? We could very easily lose something as culturally specific and moderate functional as a baseball cap. We wouldn't lose hats entirely, but a baseball cap? Especially if you don't have baseball anymore. Imagine not knowing what baseball is, seeing something called a baseball cap, and it appears to be headgear with a duck bill. You can just picture somebody picking that up, not knowing what baseball is, knowing it's some kind of game, having the word baseball cap, knowing that it fit a human head and looks like a duck. You can imagine there being a line of scholarship inquiring into whether there was a game played with live ducks. Right? Like, that's not an unrealistic scenario. So here we have a guy wearing a Rangfust. Apparently, looks like he's also wearing a backwards bathrobe, maybe? Maybe a Snuggie? Could be a Snuggie. And using a fireplace poker to roast a hot dog or something like that. And we have the mighty ancestors, the title it says there, I think. So, like, here they are conflating a whole bunch of different things, but in a way that is, you know, not terribly... It's just far enough outside how things work to be funny, right? How to do Sakyamon, and how does it relate to the game Duck Duck Goose? Ha 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 ha! Yeah, I was just recalling the other night the time on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. They had a guy from Minnesota, and the lowball easy question that they start with was fill in the blank, duck duck blank. And he couldn't answer it because in Minnesota it's duck duck gray duck. That cultural context had gotten lost just even in our modern cultural environment, imagine how much stranger it gets over time as people perceive the past as a more and more monolithic external entity. Okay, so there was a down over here too, and I should go explore it. Okay, what do we got? Whoop! What'd I do? I died, is what I did. Don't worry, you can't die in the cave. Oh, another memory. It's another night memory it's gonna be. So there's a battle, and he's expected to participate, but he doesn't. Not surprising. So what's down, and down, and down? Another exhibit.
Hey kids, smell like a real live dinosaur with our newest interactive exhibit experience. Dinosaurs existed over 10,000 years ago, when they roamed the world's highest mountain peaks in search of fruits and berries. Dinosaurs were social animals that lived in groups governed by a rigid organizational structure. An alpha dinosaur was the lord of his tribe, leading foraging trips and assigning tasks. Fun fact, dinosaurs required no sleep and had to keep in nearly constant motion to survive, much like the Amazon forest-dwelling penguin.
So again, we get this conflation that is simultaneously absolutely absurd and also a little bit on the nose, right? So, conflating dinosaur facts with shark factoids, the thing about not sleeping, most like there is a type of shark that will stop breathing if it stops swimming. I don't think it's all sharks, and I don't think that means that they don't sleep. I think they just like swim in their sleep or can hold their breath or something. I remember reading about this, but really not my area. But the idea that dinosaurs lived in rigid pack structure with an alpha, like the disproven factoids about wolves. I'm gonna disillusion you again, I'm sorry, but the guy who wrote that study later retracted it because he found out that he had only been observing wolves in captivity who had no relationship to one another. And it turns out that wolves out in the real world live in family groups and are extremely social. And often, make group consensus or, follow a leader but only voluntarily. The whole alpha, beta, omega structure is pretty much fabricated. And the guy who wrote it has retracted it and now writes much better based science. And then we have this, what looks almost like a stegosaurus, but it's combining some different dinosaur pieces. So it's got this flat head with a fin-ridged back and stripes and a thagomizer. Yes, they really are called thagomizers, and yes, it is because of the Far Side comic. Those things did not have a particular name. They were just known by paleontologists as tail spikes. And then that comic came out, and paleontologists went, yes, we'll take it. Just because you like science doesn't mean you can't have a sense of humor. See also the Sonic the Hedgehog pathway in your auditory system. So we have a featherless dinosaur also. So, I mean, I will grant you that when this game was made, we hadn't sort of popularly understood that dinosaurs were feathered. Modern depictions tend to show them feathered now, but we still kind of think of them as scaly lizard folk, right? So another thing about the habitats, they lived at the top of mountain peaks and eating berries and whatever. So they found these fossils on mountain peaks. So of course they think, oh, they're on mountain peaks, but we happen to know with our current geological knowledge that Some of those dinosaurs were in different locations. There are lots of different kinds of dinosaurs, not just this one, whatever it is. Um, we know that the Earth has shifted in that time, that mountains have formed from ocean beds, and that places that were once mesas have fallen into the sea. There's a lot of stuff there. Uh, how to I need to rewrite my Alpha Male Samurai Viking OC. Sorry. Sorry about your OC. Um, this mostly looks like a Dimetrodon, which was technically not a dinosaur yet. Yes, that's another thing. I've talked a couple of times about time conflation. We think of ancient Greece, and we are thinking of a time span of anywhere from 1,000 to, well, 400 to 12,000 years. Somewhere in there. Uh, a lot can happen in 1,200 years, you know? We talk about ancient Rome, and we're talking about anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 years. It there's so much that goes on in sort of pressing timelines together. And once you know more about dinosaurs and pterodons and other ancient beasts, you realize that the dinosaur is a very small category compared to all life on Earth in ancient times. That, ancient times, prehistory spans tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. And so, like, this is all bits and pieces, facts and things that sound like facts, everything mushed together, and and the exhibit is smell like a dinosaur. How do you know what a dinosaur smells like? You probably don't. They have some technology in this time that allows them to think that they can recreate what a dinosaur smells like. That's not an unreasonable thing to think we might have at some point. I mean, think about, there was just a few years ago, they did a scan of the surviving mummified throat of one of the kings of ancient Egypt and recreated his voice. You know what it sounds like? Ah! It's nonsense. It's nonsense. It's a publicity stunt. And this museum is full of publicity stuff. This is a public interest museum. It's clearly not very well vetted, but, who knows what knowledge they've lost. They're conflating the study of dinosaurs from our era, plus a bunch of gobbledygook, bits and pieces that they assume are about dinosaurs that clearly aren't, and who knows how good their records are. Clearly they're not the best. And keep in mind, this is an era that has time travel, so they could go find out, and they don't care to. At least not this museum. So they have some technology that lets them smell like a dinosaur, for some reason. That's the thing that people in this day and age want to know. Maybe it smells like bad dental hygiene. Okay. I think that's all that there was down here. God, I have so much to talk about. Come on. Well, let's go see. Okay, we can't get through there.
Greatest Employee of All Time award comes with a pretty big raise. Have I rubbed that in yet?
You have. Alright. So this time machine also takes us to prehistoric times, where we have jungle flora, big old ferns, big old leafy greens, water dripping all sorts of places.
Prehistory. My formative years.
Get it? Because cave formation. The ladders still work like ladders, but now they look like they're more natural. We have a carving of that guy. It's the best employee of all time portrait. There's another one. So clearly, either humans are already here at this time, or somebody brought these back in time just to mess with everything. So we've got an up. And just remember, this is the cave, so we've still got stuff in the cave wall that doesn't necessarily match the time we're experiencing. So if we stop this drip, we might be able to get people through there. And hey, look, a convenient object that we might be able to use to stop the drip. We don't even need a Ranghurst? Is that what they called them? Okay. And we can see that this is even where that fish skeleton came from. You can see the matching body in the rock below. Nothing over here at the moment. I wonder if we can just zap back to... Yeah, we can. And hey, look! No barrier. Plonk. Woohoo! Can we run around different times? We can. We can be in as many times as we want.
Got my own hover parking spot. Came with getting greatest employee of all time. Got my own hover parking spot.
Yeah, you said that just
Came
now.
with
Thank
getting
you.
greatest employee of all time.
Let's see if this makes us... Nope, they can't use the elevator still. Anyway, back to the past. Gosh, how many carvings of this guy did they make? There's our time machine. Oh, right, because that was up. Forgot this was the main level. We gotta go down. So what's down here? Nothing this way. That's a noise. More evidence of human habitation. Ooh, a time traveler memory. There she is! She has fine teeth. Oh. She hates this guy. A lot. Oh boy, she really hates this guy. We can see some of their other coworkers here, having an ugly sweater party, it looks like.
Wheel still not roll.
Hello, Thog.
Dog need more shape for wheel. Critic not understand Thog work.
So these are evidently
This will
self-portraits.
be Thog greatest creation.
He's trying to invent the wheel, and
Critic not understand
somehow we can
Thog
understand
work.
him. But he is the exact same model
Still
as
not
his
roll.
theoretical ancestor, the greatest employee of all time.
Critic not
Have in fact
understand
worked here
Thog
for
work.
many generations. So what's down here? Oh, hi. It's that Dimetrodon thing. Hi. I can't wake it up this way. Should probably good. I'd probably die. Oh. I wonder if we can move Thog's wheel.
Wheel still not roll.
This is, by the way, not
Thog
at
need
all
more shape for wheel.
accurate to how we understand the development of the wheel.
Thog want wheel roll.
It geometric
This will
shapes
be Thog
like this
greatest
pentagram
creation.
and hexagon
Thog need
Ugh.
more shape for
are much
wheel.
more difficult to create than a round shape, and you can roll like
This will
other
be
stuff.
Thog greatest creation.
How do Sakiemon? I like all the stuff buried in the rocks. Yes, like the
Critic not
gemstones and
understand
skeletons.
Thog work.
Oh, I can roll. I can move it.
Thog want wheel roll.
Bonk. Anyway.
Wheel still not roll.
Oh, so that one died, and now we have a
Thog
square
want
wheel.
wheel roll.
Let's get rid of this one too. I wonder what we'll get then. We got a
Critic not
triangle.
understand Thog work. This will be Thog greatest creation.
Will we get a plank? Will we get another hexagon? Will we get a dodecahedron? I don't know.
Wheel still
Okay,
not
a
roll.
hexagon. Okay, that's pretty funny though. I like that. Okay. Let's get out of here. Oh, right. We didn't go this way. I knew there was another way. Hey, look! It's a wheel. It rolls. But only so far. So, again, we know that this is nonsense, right? Because we never have humans and any kind of dinosaur or dinosaur-like critter up until, like, birds. They don't overlap. Prehistoric man did not, in fact, exist at the same time as a Dimetrodon, featherless or otherwise. But this is about how we perceive history, not about how history actually was. What was up here? Oh, just the fuse box. Sorry, now I have to actually play the game, and that means I have to remember what things are what. Okay, that doesn't matter to us. I'll just keep that from being a thing. It's easier on me. I'm looking for a bucket. Maybe. There's a series of books by Connie Willis where they invent time travel and use it for precisely this kind of thing. I mean, not what the time traveler here is actually using it for, but like you can't change the past. Like it's not just not allowed, it's not possible. You can't change the past in any meaningful way. So they just use it to go back and research things. It's not a very happy series of books, but it is an interesting thing to think about with time travel. All of the research you could do, all of the things we could know that we currently cannot. Alright, so here we all are.
The greatest employee of all time
yeah.
award comes with a pretty big raise. Have I rubbed that in yet?
So why can't I use the elevator? That's what I want to know.
No touching the exhibits.
Okay, we can't just steal a smurg. There is surveillance in place, we know that. We've got these cameras. And apparently there are lasers.
I heard voting on the GEOAT committee was unanimous. FYI, that stands for greatest employee of all time. I won, by the way.
You know, I think this game was made before the term GOAT, or greatest of all time, was common. At least I hadn't heard it. That does not mean it wasn't around, but I hadn't heard it, for sure. That doesn't matter, but also, does any of this matter? What else can I do here? Why is there an arcade machine? Why can't I play it? And why is it already after 4?
I heard voting on the GEOAT committee was unanimous. FYI, that's...
Oh. Right, they've moved the log. I can't take the smurg. Is there something over here? No, that was a memory or something. But you know what I can do? I can smell like a dinosaur.
Now you smell like a stinky old dinosaur. Isn't that great?
Dinosaur fug. Oh, there was a UFO down there. I didn't notice that before. In the wall, I mean. That's just the cave being the cave, not a particular attribute of the museum. Oh, what's up there? Is that the log? I want to know why I can't use the elevator.
Don't touch any of the exhibits.
Same to you. Alright, so now we smell like a dinosaur or something. So, let's see what happens when we go near a dinosaur smelling like a dinosaur. Oop, that's not the right way. Forgot there were two distinct downs. Hey. Oh boy. We sure got some dinosaur mating pheromones. Alright. Well, that dinosaur is pretty in love with us. Hey, I bet we could drop a rock on its head. I don't know why we want to drop a rock on its head, but
voting on the GEOAT
we can.
committee was unanimous. FYI, that's it.
And if we can, we should, right? That's how adventure games work.
Why not fog make wheel work? Fog need more shape for wheel.
Yep, that's clearly what they want us to do. Okay. Dead Dimetrodon. What now? Well, maybe something has changed in the future. Nope, that's... Oh. This is what happens when you time travel around. So that's our adventurer's skeleton. There will be a corresponding one down here, presumably, for our time traveler. Oh, hey, look! We have oil. What happens when a dinosaur dies? Oil. That's definitely distinctly how it works, right? There's no, like, pressure or anything needed to create oil out of a dinosaur.
Hey kids, smell like a real live dinosaur with our newest interactive exhibit experience. Dinosaurs exist.
Well, let's take our adventurer back to the present. Maybe something has changed there in a useful way. only the adventure, or only the time traveler can get through those, I'm afraid. But I don't think we need her. Okay, there's log. No? No. I want a bucket. Give me a bucket. Sorry, Rangstun? I don't remember what they called it. I need something with which to carry some oil. So we've got oil. Clearly, if I take oil and put it in that diesel engine, I'll be able to power, I don't know, the arcade game, maybe? I mean, it's gotta be there for a reason, right? Oh yeah, speaking of things in the wall, giant gear! Yep. There's our adventurer. She moved in the past, and she's still here in the future. Rangfust. I would like a Rangfust, please. Oh, maybe it powers the elevator. That'd
Yep.
be cool.
Greatest employee of all time.
Don't care.
They don't give that to just anyone.
No Rangfust here.
Got my own hover parking spot. Came with getting greatest employee of
Oops.
all time.
Come on. Move along. You know what, maybe what I should
Me
do...
And the other greatest employees of all time are all grabbing drinks at the Wizard's Lair.
Maybe what I should do...
More for me.
is just see what happens if I use the action button over here. Nope, nothing doing. Gosh dang it. Yeah, and unfortunately, it seems that in the current era, there's no way all the way down there. We've got this little thing for some reason. Oh, right, because of the fuse box. And I would take that power if I thought I could use it to power the elevator, but I haven't seen another fuse box. But that would be where the down in that direction was.
Critic not understand thog work.
Hey, Thog, can I talk to you?
Why not fog make wheel work?
Nope. Oops. Oh, you know what? I bet that if I do this, then back in the future, there will be a bucket. That's cool. That's thinking with portals. I mean time travel. Is it this way? It's this way. No, it's not this way. Huh. No? Okay, what about this time? Nope. Alright. Okay. What about now? Still no. Now her skeleton is stuck. I accidentally clipped it into that thingy. Huh. Okay. What if I roll it that way? This probably will have the same issue. Yeah. Oh, I have an idea. What if I find that wheel of thogs? What can I do with it? There's no way I can get it all the way up there.
Wheel still not roll. Why not fog make wheel work? Fog need more shape for wheel.
Still just gonna break, right? Yeah, just broke.
Why not fog make wheel work? Fog want wheel roll. Why not fog make wheel work?
Oops. Kapa. Oh, there. So there's no way I can get that all the way over there. What about that one weird rock that all geologists hate, or whatever? Nope. No way that's gonna come down. Go. Huh. Well, that's a glitch. I guess we've made the rock vibrate, but not useful, alas. Doesn't seem to be anything we can interact with here. I mean, I know we can take the same rock, and it will do the same amount of nothing. Yeah. I know what I want to do. I want to move the log. How do I move this dang log? In such a way as it stays put. Nothing over here, right? Great, thanks. I mean, ideally I want it to not be here, specifically. So I need Thog to move his butt up here somehow. Or something.
Log ahead of his time. Critic not understand Thog work. Wheel still not roll. Thog want wheel roll.
Come here. Oops. What to do, what to do. I know I've done this before.
Don't touch any of the exhibits.
I can't get back up, so there's no grabbing the shovel, so you must not need it. There's something in here that I can use somehow.
Me And the other greatest employees of all time are all grabbing drinks at the wizard's lair later. Wait, there are no other greatest employees of all.
There's gotta be something. Realistically, it's gotta be in the prehistoric setting. There's just not that much here.
Critic not understand Thog
Come
work.
on, why can't I talk to you?
Why not Thog make wheel work? Wheel still not roll.
Hmm.
Why not Thog make
Hi,
wheel
Fane.
work?
Yeah. Hi.
This
So
will be Thog's
let me
greatest
get away from
creation.
Thog for a minute. So I should be finishing up. I've managed to get myself stuck on a puzzle, which is not a common thing. I just can't remember what I'm supposed to do here. So Fane Abyssal is asking, what I am streaming next and where, so let me just put that out again. I will be streaming next weekend and for most Saturdays in June and July on the Save Ancient Studies channel on Twitch. I will be playing the Forever Labyrinth by Inkle Studios, and it should be a good time. I know almost nothing about this game, but my Archeo Gaming friends have told me I'm going to love it, and that there's a lot to talk about. I'm hoping to have some interesting guests. I've asked Ludo History if he has time. You know, wish me luck. So, yeah, that should be fun. I think I might actually have to stop here, as it is quite late, and I, for some reason, cannot find the thing I need to stop this wheel rolling. So I guess we'll solve that mystery perhaps late in July. My streams will be at the same time as this stream, so they're going to be 3 p.m. Eastern, and the channel is Save Ancient Studies, all one word. So I will hopefully see you there. I think it should be a good time, and it's going to be a very interesting one. And we will come back to the cave and finish up probably in either late July or early August, just depending on how I feel. That's going to be a question of personal energy. But I do expect, at least in late August, I will be back on this channel. I will be streaming every Saturday just like I usually do. Thank you all so much for coming along for the ride. I hope you had a good time. And if you are so inclined, please do check out my YouTube channel where you can find the whole playlist of all the ancient games I have ever streamed. Alright. Keep learning, friends.